Hey everybody, I hope you've been enjoying my videos that I've been putting up. This is only the second one, but this is something I'm trying to work on. I hope you've also been enjoying my podcast. I was going to say one thing, that if you want to find some of my previous episodes, I started this actually last year. So I've actually got a whole ton of episodes. I think there's about 52 episodes, 52 podcasts that I did way back, even when it was called the Preacher's Forum podcast. I actually changed the name to MindShift last year. But you can check out past episodes. You can go to my website, preachersforum.com, and you can find all of my past episodes back when it was named the Preacher's Forum podcast, as well as on Podbean. And I think the links are in the notes here on YouTube. So if you want to listen to some of my previous episodes, you can do that as well. I was going to say a couple thoughts about my podcast that I did with Andrew Gurevich, the one that came out last week, and I've got another one coming out this Friday. It really struck me that when I was listening to what he was talking about, I remember him when we went to Bible college way back when, in the early 1990s, we went to seminary together, we played in worship bands together, and he was not the person that he is today. He's changed so much. I said that he's basically come out into that second half of life, as Father Richard Rohr talks about. He's in the process of becoming himself. And back then, it struck me then that he was, like I say, putting the mask on. He was trying to be someone he wasn't. And unfortunately, oftentimes in churches, we see that this is the case. And as he said, what you find in churches is that what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to put the mask on until your face grows to fit it. And that's a really sad commentary, because for those of us that have walked away from the church, we're now in the process, ironically, of becoming who we are. And the church was supposed to do that for us. At least I felt that it was. That was the talk anyway. And maybe that's been your experience if you've ever been anywhere near a church or part of a church, that the church was supposed to help you learn who you were, and they were supposed to help you understand what your spiritual gifts are and how to serve and do all those things. But one of the reasons that I walked away from the church is because I felt like I was totally underutilized. I was unutilized. And this was just one of the problems that I had. And one of the things that struck me too about what Andrew was talking about was this idea of this biblical worldview, this real simplistic kind of view that we're taught of the world. And you get crazy things in the church a lot of times, especially on the conservative side, things like a young earth creation, this idea that the earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old. And what happens is you get these doctrines like inerrancy, the idea that the Bible can't have a single mistake or doesn't contain any mistakes. Well, it's a house of cards, because what happens is if you actually question these things, if you actually start to deconstruct these things and you find out they don't really hold water, well, you oftentimes feel a sense of betrayal. You feel a sense of anger. Like, wait a minute, I was lied to. And I'm not saying that preachers and pastors, most of them are very well-meaning. They are. They're really hardworking, and I wouldn't ever want to be a pastor again, but I feel for these people. I know that most of them are well-meaning. They're working hard. It's a thankless, tiring job, and they're only doing what they think they have to do. And they think they're teaching people from the Bible, and they're upholding this biblical worldview and everything else, but oftentimes what happens is it doesn't work, as I say. And actually the whole thing becomes really a house of cards. If one thing fails, if there's one little chink in the armor, one crack in the foundation, the whole thing comes crashing down. And not only is your Christian faith destroyed, for a lot of people, their whole view of God and Jesus is destroyed as well. And you have to wonder, is this a faith that's even worth holding on to? Because a lot of people feel really, like I say, betrayed and angry about how they were treated and what they were taught growing up, especially if you've grown up in the church. And so these are some of the things that struck me about the conversation with Andrew. And I wanted to kind of touch base on a couple of those things. I'm interested to hear your comments, thoughts, and feedback. So please leave me a comment either in the notes here, or you can send me an email or follow me on Twitter at MindShift 2018. And I'd love to hear what you have to think about some of these comments that I'm making in these videos, as well as what we talk about in some of the podcasts. I was just going to say real quick before I finish this video that after the conversation with Andrew Gurevich, I've got 2 episodes coming up with atheist David Fitzgerald. He's the author of a book called nailed 10 Christian myths that show Jesus never existed at all. And he's also come out with a book recently called Jesus Mything in Action. He's a mythologist, and he questioned whether or not Jesus of Nazareth, the very Jesus that we read about in the Gospels, did that Jesus even exist, and is there historical evidence for Jesus outside of the Gospels? Once you take the Gospels out of the equation, what are you left with? And are they nothing more than propaganda to support this particular view of Jesus, whichever one it is from the Gospel? So make sure and check out the following couple of weeks after Andrew's podcast this Friday. Coming up, it's going to be a couple of weeks with David Fitzgerald. All right, hopefully you're subscribing to this channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. So thanks again for checking out MindShift Podcast.